Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. This video is going to talk about the basics of independent and dependent clauses. If you are following along in the textbook, all this stuff is found on page 92. Here we go. An independent clause is a group of words that contains a subject and a verb, a subject and a subject and a verb. Oops. A subject and a verb, and it could be its own sentence. It doesn't have to be, and it often is not, but it could be its own sentence. The nice thing about independent clauses is there is only one kind. An independent clause is an independent clause is an independent clause, and that's it. Because independent clauses are the most integral part of a sentence, every single complete sentence must have at least one independent clause. We do need to talk briefly about how we connect independent clauses, because there are tons of sentences that have more than one independent clause. Here are the three basic ways to connect independent clauses. We can connect independent clauses by using a comma plus a fanboys. You remember the fanboys, for, and, nor, but, or, yet, so. We can connect independent clauses using a semicolon. Or we can connect independent clauses using a semicolon plus a conjunctive adverb like therefore or however. Let us look at some examples. We are going to find just the independent clauses in these sentences. The first sentence reads like this. For dinner, Twiggy ate pancakes that were shaped like saber-toothed tigers. Here's my subject. Here's my verb. The independent clause is Twiggy ate pancakes. Now, just like before, we always have to include modifiers, and in this instance, for dinner is a modifier. So the entire independent clause is for dinner, Twiggy ate pancakes. I could put a period there. It's a complete thought independent clause. Next sentence reads like this. After dinner, Twiggy watched the movie The Land Before Time because it is her favorite movie. Here is my subject. Here is my verb. We also need to look for things like objects and modifiers. So the word movie here, this is an object. It's a direct object. It's the thing being watched. We also have to include modifiers, which means we have to include the words after dinner. We got to include the word the. And in this case, Land Before Time is an appositive, which is also a modifier. So the entire independent clause is after dinner, Twiggy watched the movie The Land Before Time. I could put a period there. It is a complete sentence. The last sentence goes like this. Perhaps this explains why she has so many stuffed dinosaur toys. Here is my subject. Here is my verb. We got a very small independent clause. Here's my single modifier. Perhaps this explains. It doesn't sound right, which is why we have dependent clauses, but grammatically, it is a complete sentence, and I could put a period there and have a grammatically complete sentence. Perhaps this explains. Now let's look at dependent clauses, which are also found on page 92 of your textbook. Dependent clauses. They're a clause, so they are a group of words that contain a subject and a verb, but dependent clauses cannot be its own sentence, because a dependent clause does not express a complete thought. Also, it is important to know that dependent clauses are also called subordinate clauses. I do not know why we have two words for the exact same thing, but dependent clauses and subordinate clauses are the exact same thing. I sometimes use them interchangeably. I try to use the word dependent clause most often, but if I say subordinate clause, I mean dependent clause, because they're the same thing. Dependent clauses must come with an independent clause, because if you do not have an independent clause, you are left with an incomplete thought and then an incomplete sentences. Dependent clauses start with relative pronouns, relative adverbs, subordinating conjunctions, and certain pronouns. And we will look at these lists of words as we get through each type of dependent clauses. Speaking of dependent clauses, there are three types. We have adjective, adverb, and noun clauses. Here are the same exact sentences from before. Now let us look at the dependent clauses. In the first sentence, the word that is a word that starts a dependent clause. That also happens to be the subject. Were, there's my verb. So the dependent clause is that were shaped like saber-toothed tigers. Subject verb. I cannot walk up to somebody though and just say, that were shaped like saber-toothed tigers, because that is not a complete sentence. In the second sentence, the word because is a word that starts a dependent clause. It is my subject, is the verb. The entire dependent clause is because it is her favorite movie. Once again, I can't just walk up to somebody and say, because it is her favorite movie, I don't know, because that's not a complete thought, because it is a dependent clause. The last sentence, why, is a word that starts a dependent clause. She is the subject. Has is the verb. And once again, I can't just walk up to somebody and say, why she has so many stuffed dinosaur toys. It's not a question, it's a statement, but it's not a complete thought because this is a dependent clause. Okay, so that covers everything for independent clauses because there's only one type of independent clause. The next videos, however, we will walk through all three types of dependent clauses, talk about what words start them, how you identify them, and what you do with them. See you in the next video!